Welcome to this video lesson on 1-1. We're starting on page 5 today in your textbook, and we're going to be writing and interpreting equations. So we'll be given some sentences and asked to write an equation from the sentence, and then we'll be given some equations and asked to write a sentence from the equation. So we'll go both directions. This is really going to see if you are able to interpret the words and assign mathematical operations and numbers to those words. So it can be tricky at first, but I think once you get the hang of it, it'll be pretty easy. So you can read the key concept here with the 3 steps. I'm not going to go over that. I'm going to move right into example 1, but pause the video, read those, and then we'll begin example 1 together. Okay. So this first example is asking us to write an equation for a sentence. So they give us this sentence, 20 minus the quotient. So 20 minus the quotient of 7 and x is the same as twice x. That is our sentence. In your textbook, they like to use color to separate all of the operations and the numbers and the letters. I usually like to underline and circle. So that's what I'm going to do on the sentence here. I know that I have some numbers and letters. That's what I'm going to underline. So 20, we have 7, x, and x again. Now I'm going to circle the operations or the words that I think are representing operations. So minus is one, quotient is another, is the same as twice. This one's kind of tricky. You might not catch it right off the bat, but this is a mathematical operation. The same as, and actually let me change that to is the same as, and then twice is actually a separate operation. Okay, looks like we have everything underlined and circled. You can either follow their color coding or you can follow my underlines and circles. Where it says 20 minus, that's where I'd start writing it out. So I have 20, and then obviously minus is subtraction. That one's pretty easy. Quotient of 7 and x. So if you're not familiar with quotient, that actually is talking about division. And we went over this in the introduction video, but we don't write division with the division symbol anymore. We write it like a fraction now. So that little fraction bar right here is representing division. So we know that it is the quotient of 7 and x, or another way to say it is we are dividing 7 and x. So 7 divided by x is the same as. This one was the one I said is tricky, but is the same as means equal to. Equal to twice x. So twice is representing another operation, which is multiplication. And we have the letter x. Now in middle school, you might have written it like this, 2 times, but now since we're using the letter x, this looks confusing. So we're no longer going to write multiplication like that. We're going to either write it with a dot separating the two, so this reads 2 times x, or we are going to write it right next to each other. So 2x. All right, and that is our final equation. We know it's an equation because it has an equal sign. An expression does not have an equal sign. Pause the video, try the check. It's multiple choice, write in your letter, and we're moving on to example 2. Example 2 is a word problem. So pause the video, read this section right here, take your time, take a look at this graph, and we're going to use the graph and the wording to help us out. Okay, step 1. It tells us to identify each unknown and assign a variable to it. So they're going to let n, or they're choosing the letter n, to represent the number of teens surveyed who, and this first fill in the blank is are not on a social network. So your first fill in the blank is are not on a social network. And we are on to the next page. We're on page 6. All right, so we know that there were 799 teens that were surveyed, and some use a social network and some do not. We're trying to figure out how many do not. The second step is to identify the givens and their relationship. So the givens are, we know that there are a certain amount of teens that were surveyed. There were a total of 799. So 799 total. And some number of the teens use a social network. Blank of those are on a social network. Say people their age are mostly kind online. So let's look back. How many said people their age are mostly kind? Looks like 430. So we're going to fill in that blank. 430. The other blank did not. So how many did not? Let's see. Remaining 193 do not find people mostly kind online. So, and I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah, 193. All right, so we're just identifying the things that we already know to help us find the things we don't know. Okay, so the 433 and 193, 430 and 193 make up the group on a social network, and the rest of the 799 are not on a social network. So they want us to write a sentence as an equation. The sum of the teens on a social network and those not on a social network is 799. Let's use my method like before. We're going to circle any of the operation words. So sum, and let's see, we have a number, 799. We know those not on a social network. So this whole part right here is represented by the letter N. That's what they told us back here. Let N equal the number of teens surveyed who are not on a social network. Okay, so the sum of teens on a social network, which is, let's see, this. So we're going to have 430 teens plus 193 that are on a social network. And then sum represents addition. So this whole thing, we're going to add it to the number of teens not on a social network, which is N, representing that whole thing with just a letter, is, let's circle that, is represents equal to, is 799 or is equal to 799. Okay, I use parentheses here because we're grouping these two numbers together. You could add these two numbers together though, and you wouldn't need the parentheses anymore. All right. Try the check here. It's another multiple choice, and we'll go over that in class. Moving on to the next page, page 7, example 3. This time we're asked to write an equation with multiple variables. Now, in case you're not familiar, variables represent the things we don't know. So there's going to be measurements, there's going to be numbers, there's going to be values, things that we don't know in algebra. That's really what algebra is all about. We use letters to represent things we don't know. And the most common letter is X. We can also use Y. We can use Z. We can use A. We can use any letter as a variable to represent something we don't know. Okay. So translate the sentence into a formula. The perimeter of a rectangle is twice the sum of the length and the width. Okay, let's talk about the things that we don't know. The perimeter of a rectangle is twice the sum of the length and the width. Let's circle and underline. So we have perimeter, we have rectangle, we have twice. That sounds like an operation. Sum sounds like an operation. Length and width. Okay. So the unknowns in this case are the perimeter and the length and the width. We don't know what any of those are. And these could be represented by letters. I think we'll do that in a second. But just go ahead and write out those full words. Yeah, and here it is. So let P equal the perimeter, L equal the length, and W is the width. All right, that just helps us simplify it so we don't have to use the words. Identify the givens and their relationship. So twice is going to mean multiplication. So we're going to say multiply. Twice the sum means that we are going to add first and then multiply. Write an equation. So the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle, let's think back. This would have been in middle school. If we want to know the perimeter, which is the outside of the rectangle. So we're thinking about all of this, not the inside. The inside would be the area. Perimeter is going to be 2 times the length. So 2 times, let's say, L plus 2 times the width, W. That is how we find perimeter. So we're going to say is equal to P for perimeter. And that's it. Moving on, we're at the bottom of page 7. We're actually going to skip this check, and I want you to read this portion here on your own. We're not going to read it in the video. But a constraint is a very important thing for you to know, and we'll go over that in class. Okay, this will be our last example and our last check for this lesson. Example 4 asks us to write a sentence for an equation. So we have the equation they give us, which is 2z minus 1 equals 5. Now, even the way that I just read that is going to help us write out the operations. So the first term is 2z. We call this a term. 2z. When we write the number right next to the letter, like we talked about earlier, that's representing multiplication now in algebra. So we're saying 2 times z, or 2 times z, or 2 times z. All of those are ways to write multiplication. So the first term, 2z, is 2z or 2 times z. That's what they say right here. The subtraction symbol can be written in ways like minus, less, or subtract. I would say minus in this case, so 2 times z minus. And then 1 and 5 are just written as 1 and 5, and we know that the equal sign is just going to be equal to, or is the same as, like we had in the example earlier. So the sentence that we could write is 2 times z minus 1 equals, oh, almost write the equal sign, equals 5. Again, you could use different words, just like they had different words for subtraction and for equals. These are just the ones that I chose. So 2 times z minus 1 equals 5. Pretty easy. Try the check here, and we'll go over that one in class. Thank you for watching this video lesson.